Hey, what's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and today we're checking out the Ruike P662-B, which is a name that really doesn't roll off the tongue well at all, but this is actually an excellent budget-friendly EDC knife at $33 right now on Amazon. I have seen this below the $30 price point or so on Amazon, but it's been a while, so it may drop back down there one day, or this may be a casualty of inflation and that's just this new price point. Either way though, $33, I think this is an excellent value. Now, this is on the smaller side as far as EDC knives go at 6.67 inches overall, and so still perfectly capable, I think really decent for its size, but maybe on the smaller side than some people prefer. Now, you do get a generous 3.75 inch handle here, and so I'm able to get a 4-finger grip. You can see it's a little bit tight, but my pinky is fully on there, and surprisingly comfortable. Ergonomically, I think super comfortable handle. I do feel a couple points when I'm gripping down on that though. One of them being this liner lock and the other being the pocket clip. Neither are what I would say constitutes a hot spot. They're not extremely uncomfortable, but I'm aware of their presence. But still, super comfortable, super grippy. We have G10 scales on here, only available in black as far as I know. I haven't seen any other colors, although I would love to see this in a few more colors. Obviously, continue offering black since that's probably the most popular, but I do find it a little bit boring to just constantly get black G10 knives. But at that price point, I understand just kind of offering one base model, and so that does make sense, but would love to see it in more colors. Now, 2.91 inches on that blade, which should keep us legal pretty much everywhere in the US. This is a locking knife, so other places it may not be, but at least in the US, there's very few places that I know of that have under 3-inch blade limits on locking knives, so should be fine everywhere. And again, 2.33 ounces, so extremely lightweight overall. Now, that blade is a 14C28N, which I'm really happy with at this price point. Bead blast finish, which I think looks fine. Kind of a stylized dip here. I don't know what that's for. I'm assuming it serves no function at all and is just for the looks. It's kind of right at the edge of this wedge, and so guessing that's just for looks. And I do think it looks kind of cool. Now, it does have some jimping on the spine as well, and I'd almost say that's just for looks as well. You can see it kind of lines up with the portion of the tang that's in the handle behind that thumb stud, and it's really not adding anything in terms of grippiness for me. It's not super deep, it's really close together, and so maybe just a hair of grippiness, but overall I don't feel like it's adding anything to the ergos of this knife, so I'd be fine if it didn't exist. Doesn't bother me that it does, but definitely prefer jimping. Like if there were a few of these instead, these large notches, that would be a much more effective grip for my thumb than these tiny little jumps are adding. So would prefer that, but overall not too bad. And so one thing worth noting is this is not a very lefty friendly knife, not an ambidextrous knife whatsoever. You can see that thumb stud is single-sided, so we don't have a thumb stud for left-handers. It's probably reversible. I would imagine if you take that out, Loctite it back in, you may be able to reverse it, but even the handles are a little bit different shape. There's a cutout to give you access, which is already pretty small on the right hand side, and if you flip it over, even smaller on the left hand side, so not sure you're going to be able to get much purchase on that thumb stud even if you did reverse it. Pocket clip, also right hand tip up only, not reversible. It is recessed into the handle, as are the screws, so that's a nice feature and really nice and stout. I would have loved to see that with the same bead blast finish as the blade, just to kind of bring the entire look together, but that's obviously expecting a lot for a $33 knife. Also not extremely deep carry, but not a whole lot exposed in your pocket, but not reversible, so really not going to be a lefty friendly knife whatsoever, which is unfortunate. Could have added that extra thumb stud, and you know, people maybe don't love that extra recess. You could put an insert in there, adding a little bit of cost, but would have liked to see a lefty version if they're not going to make this one ambidextrous, but not the case, so it is what it is. Now, there is a barrel standoff for that lanyard hole, and I like that actually. So if you don't use the lanyard, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, and if you do use the lanyard, you have a nice spot for it that's not gonna flip up into the front of the path of the blade. It is a liner lock, not jimped, which I actually do like, and you have plenty of access to it. You can see nice action on there. This is on bronze washers, and so really smooth action. It drops down to my nail, shakes it the rest of the way shut. On the flip side, opening it up with that thumb stud, I do find it to be nice and snappy and to work pretty well overall. However, my wife had a very hard time flipping it. In fact, she gave up flipping it and moved to a two-hand opening. And that's because the detent on this seems to be sitting very deeply. And so it's got a very, very heavy detent that you have to break past. Now, I'm flipping knives constantly, and so for me, I didn't really notice it, but it was the first thing she noticed. She could not open it one-handed, she couldn't slow roll it, she couldn't break past that detent with her thumb. And so obviously she's not sitting around flipping a ton of knives, so that makes sense. And so I wasn't sure. I went and looked at some of the Amazon reviews. A couple of them mentioned that as well. So that definitely seems to be a thing. I think if you flip a lot of knives, you probably won't notice it, but if maybe you have something causing you to lose dexterity in your thumb, or you don't flip a lot of knives, you may not have that kind of muscle memory and strength to break past that detent. It is pretty heavy, and it doesn't seem like it's just my model, but it does lead to a very snappy, once you break past of it, flip. And so I do like that quite a bit actually, but worth mentioning that maybe some people might struggle with that. Now, I already mentioned the ergos on this are excellent. It's super lightweight. I think this is a great knife for the value. It is on the smaller side, but if that's fine with you and you're fine with that detent and you're right-handed, I think this could be an excellent budget-friendly option. And so overall, I think the aesthetics are also pretty clean. I like the looks of that quite a bit. In the closed position, it's not really doing much for me. Like if we look at it in the closed position, you know, they did add some shapes to that handle that make it look a little bit better than just a plain flat G10, but not doing a whole lot for me. The show side is much better than that back side with that pocket clip, but you know, not doing a whole lot. But in the open position, I think that swedge on the blade, that notch, and the overall package, I think looks pretty good. It's pretty slim knife, not super large, and nice full flat grind on here. Pretty sterile show side overall. You just have that rake, which I believe that's the pronunciation, not Ruike. I'm pretty sure it's rake. On the front side, if you flip over to that back side, there's a little bit more text. It's pretty small, but also a decent amount of it. So you have the 14C28N tucked right up against that handle, P662-B, and then a triangle 04. Don't know what that triangle is. Maybe something specific to them, or may have some other meaning. I'm guessing this is a maker's mark, although I didn't see anywhere where they mentioned who designed this, so not sure if that's like a model logo, a maker's mark, or what that image is. If you know, feel free to let me know. And then another, what looks to be a serial number, but we already have the model number, P662-B, but it says E4PEZE00324, and so not sure what that is. Don't love when they put that on the blade itself, but again, it's something that you see pretty commonly on these cheaper knives made in China. Would love to see a little bit more of a sterile blade, but it's so minimal, it doesn't obviously bother me. But when I look at it, I'm like, why did they put that on there? Now, also worth noting with these cheaper Chinese made knives is, if I had one recommendation for them, it would be to give your models a name. P662-B is not something that's super memorable. You know, for me, handling a lot of knives, every once in a while people will ask, you know, hey, what's a good budget-friendly knife? And I don't mean online or at home when I can just grab it and look at it. I mean like in person. You know, I have family members, friends that know I'm into knives and might ask. And I'm never going to remember P662-B or any mixture of random numbers and letters. If you gave it, you know, any name like platypus or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be anything super specific. You don't have to have a whole marketing team. Just give it a random word and it will be much more memorable and recommendable than P662-B. But overall, I do think this is a really good knife if you are right-handed, first of all, and looking for a budget knife. I think not a lot of flaws. Obviously, the one major one being that super heavy detent. You may be able to hear it even when I pull it with without thumb flicking it. takes quite a bit of effort to break through, and it just seems like that detent ball is maybe going a little bit further into that detent than it needs to be. But overall, like I said, not a deal breaker for me, but maybe for some people. But let me know what you think of this knife down in the comments below. And if you have any experience with rake, any other models you might recommend, because had a pretty good experience with this one. I believe this is the only rake in my collection, and I don't think I even bought this one. I don't know where it came from. Maybe one of the subscription boxes, Going Gear, Knife Nerd Club, something like that. But either way, I would love to hear if they have other models you'd recommend, because I did have a pretty positive first experience with this knife, and so would love to check out others, especially it being a budget-friendly knife that's kind of readily available on Amazon. I don't usually love buying knives on Amazon, but these types of knives are kind of made for Amazon. Maybe some of the other knife retailers sell it, but Amazon is their main market anyway, and so you're not going to get a counterfeit of a $33 Ruike or anything by buying it on Amazon. So again, would love to hear your thoughts on this knife or any other knife from the rake lineup in the comments below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification button if you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.